Welcome, Triangle Area Realtors. I want to welcome you to our town hall meeting featuring Dr. Lawrence Yoon, followed by the President's Roundtable featuring Raleigh Regional Association Realtor President Lewis Grubbs, Durham Regional Association Wallace Piper, and yours truly. Before I introduce Dr. Young, I wanted to take a moment and explain how today's event will run. The chat feature has been disabled so that all the questions for Dr. Yoon or the presidents can be placed into the question and answer section below. We will try to get as many of them as time allows. Thank you for joining us today, and now on to our main event. Lawrence Yoon is the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research at the National Association of Realtors. He oversees and is responsible for a wide range of research activities for the association, including NAR's existing home sales statistics, affordability index, home buyer and home sellers profile report. He regularly provides commentary on real estate market trends for 1.3 million realtors. Dr. Yoon creates NAR's forecasts and participates in many economic forecasting panels, among them the Blue Chip panel and the Wall Street Journal Forecasting Survey. He also participates in the Industrial Economics Discussion Group at the Joint Center for Housing. He appears regularly on financial news outlets. He's testified before Congress. Please welcome Dr. Yoon to our broadcast today. Thank you, Dr. Yoon. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Pat, for the introduction. And I'm glad that three association can get together for this event. Certainly, I am near Washington, D.C. I work in Washington, D.C., our NAR office, which is just 2 blocks from the U.S. Capitol. We strategically placed the building there to remind Congress our influence. We are watching you, and therefore, please preserve the private property rights and all the real estate issues. From Washington's perspective, or I am here at home in Arlington, Virginia, right across from the river. When we look at the Triangle region, it is the Triangle region, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill region, covering Orange, Chatham counties. So I'm glad that I can cover the whole market at once. December of last year, we had a special forecast event in Washington, D.C., NAR building. And we did invite Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson, to address about the housing issue. But the focus of the forecast was to see which local markets were likely to easily outperform the rest of the country over the next 3 to 5 years. So rather than just specifying next 12 months, very precise, just general over the next 3 to 5 years. And Raleigh was one of those top 10 markets because all the data trends, whether people migrating in from New York or from California market, whether as a retirement community or whether as a better job opportunity, and certainly Triangle region has become one of the technology hub in the country. California, many technology companies are saying it's very difficult to expand, high cost of labor, high cost of their workers' inability to buy a home. So they're looking for other options, and Raleigh has clearly become one destination for technology companies to expand, and hence it was chosen. But that was December of last year, and the relative performance, I would say, does not change. However, what about the absolute performance? That is to say that I did not foresee that we would have a recession in 2020 at that time. But here we are. We are in a recession. I think it will be very brief, but nonetheless, we are in a recession because of the unexpected path of the virus that first emanated from China and now just going across the country. Hopefully, with social distancing, we can contain some level of the virus, but as the economies are steadily reopening, I'm not sure what it is in the North Carolina or specifically the Triangle region. Maybe the mayor of Raleigh area has a little bit different from Durham, so I don't know the specifics, but as the economy is steadily reopening, what we are finding is that there is an eagerness of people wanting to buy a home because they are facing record low mortgage rates And also at the same time, people who wanted to move but delayed the decision are willing to list the property as the economy reopens. So let me put up my PowerPoint up to make the conversation easier. As an economist, we speak better with a PowerPoint. So bear with me as I get this technology up and running. All right, let me go to the home page first, to the very beginning. Maybe I need to scroll up. Okay. All right, so let's first discuss the economy. GDP is the most comprehensive measurement of economic activity. And in the first quarter, it declined 5%. And it was due to the fact that consumer and business spending had collapsed. So as the people spent less, businesses invested less, economy shrank. But just to show how strong the housing market had been before the pandemic, the residential investment grew at 18%, even as the economy was shrinking. Home building activity, home sales, spending for remodeling activity all grew very solidly, indicating that even before the pandemic, the people's desire related to real estate remained exceptionally strong. Now, the April data, which is after the first quarter, so April data, is showing that personal income grew by 12%, which is somewhat surprising because if you look at the entrepreneurial income, it is down significantly. What about wages? Well, people's wage paycheck has been cut because of the loss of jobs. How is it possible that personal income is higher during this pandemic period? And it is due to the massive stimulus package from Washington, combination of stimulus checks, the unemployment insurance, the generous unemployment insurance check, along with many small business loans, which may not need to be paid back if you follow certain guidelines. So massive stimulus has provided the income support for the country. So if people are spending less, while the overall income is higher, now this is on average. I know some people are much worse off during the pandemic, but on average, overall income appears to be higher. So if people cannot spend money, the restaurants are closed, you cannot attend a baseball game, what can you do? Well, you can only save money. So the savings rate rose to 33% of people's income in April. Typically, it would be only about 8%. So what this implies is that once the economy reopens, there could be an unleashing of spending into the economy. So there's a sizable savings, especially many of the stimulus check, that could easily go into the economy. So let's wait and see how it plays out. Related to the job market, it was a harsh April. Over 20 million job losses across the country, 7 million coming from leisure and hospitality. Disney World was closed. They have to lay off all the workers. Hotel industry barely surviving. And then the airline at only about the 20% of the capacity operating on the airline business. So leisure and hospitality took a brunt of the hit. The healthcare sector, which is the second line, is somewhat interesting, 2.5 million job losses. So you see on television images of people hospitalized because of virus, ventilators, the heroic efforts by the nurses, the doctors, but there was actual job cuts in the nursing profession and in the medical profession. How is it possible? Because many non-COVID-19 related areas, they tell you have to shut down. So people who specialize in hip surgery, well, they had to lay off workers. What about dental offices? Well, you have to cut staff. The office is closed. But these offices will need to be back up and running soon as economy reopens. We know that people need hip surgery replacement because they've been delaying it. Dental offices. So all the jobs that was lost temporarily will come back as the economy reopens in the healthcare sector. I would say the same thing about the construction. Temporary shutdown on the construction, now reopen, construction jobs will come back. Retail trade, maybe not, because people are buying more online, Amazon and others. So the retail shop could be a little difficult, now fully back online. but many of the job losses could be easily back online once the economy reopens. Now here's the overall job numbers over time. So from year 2000 all the way to today. So you see in the middle of the chart that shows the subprime lending bubble, job creation from overproduction of home building, and it stimulated many other activity. But the loans were liar's loan, and it blew up. And we had the foreclosure crisis, so we saw the job losses. So that's the middle of the chart, boom and bust. But since the low point, America experienced the longest economic expansion ever, 10 straight years of job creation. And I thought it would continue in 2020, but this unexpected pandemic occurrence. But look what happened in April. All the job that was gained in 10-year time, boom, all lost. But remember, many are just temporary furloughed loss because many other jobs will be coming back. So this is the picture for the US. Now you look at the picture for the rally and it looks like the following. So you see similar pattern, boom, little decline and boom, and the job losses. But what is the difference between rally and the rest of the country? Let me go back to the prior chart. Prior chart, once we collapse, we are back to year 2000 levels. But look at rally. You decline massively, but you are still better than year 2000 or even better than year 2007. This shows how many new people are coming into the Raleigh region, how strong the Raleigh market in relation to the rest of the country in terms of jobs. Let's look at Durham. Very similar story. You decline in April, job losses, sizable, but it is still higher, much higher than year 2000. So again, Durham doing better. And then you look at a couple of counties, Orange County, so slightly better than year 2000, and Chatham County, very small county in terms of jobs, but again, better than year 2000. So broadly speaking, Triangle region doing much better than the rest of the country over a long period. The April, large job cuts, but even accounting for that, holding up much better compared to the rest of the country. Now let's look at the unemployment insurance situation. So I want to thank the President Pat, Lewis, and Wallace, respectively, for the Orange, Chatham, Durham, Raleigh area, because local association president volunteering their time, trying to represent realtor interests. And one of the things that they have represented, filter up to the NAR, is lobby hard to assure that realtors can tap into the unemployment insurance. Because entrepreneurs were working hard before the pandemic, and the government said, you have to shut down. You cannot show homes. And how is it possible for entrepreneurs to survive through this phase other than trying to get some temporary financial assistance? So I know the realtors have the spirit of working, but the disruption was placed by the government, and we wanted to assure that you can tap into some level of financial resources during this time period. So thank you for people who are supporting NAR measures. But let's look at the overall unemployment insurance. Barely a blip across the country before the pandemic. Then you see the pandemic hit, huge increase in number of people getting laid off and filing for the unemployment insurance for the first time. These are new cases of unemployment situation. You can almost view it similarly to the coronavirus, new cases of coronavirus. We have to flatten the curve to assure that things are contained. So this is showing the number of new cases for unemployment insurance is steadily declining. So in other words, the number of fresh layoffs is getting less and less with each passing week. If you add up all these total numbers, the total number is 44 million. And you will hear in the media to say, latest week, another people filing for unemployment insurance. Total, 44 million people have filed for unemployment insurance. That is highly misleading. And here's why that figure is misleading. Because this chart shows how many people are still receiving unemployment checks, not the new cases, but still receiving. So the number of new cases coming means total number of people receiving unemployment check is rising. But now we have flattened the curve because And the number that you see is 22 million people receiving unemployment checks. So let me go back to the prior. This is 44 million total, but it's only 22 million people currently receiving. What does this mean? That means that some people who went to unemployment received a check for 1 or 2 weeks, then suddenly they found a job at FedEx, at Amazon, or other companies, and hence they don't need the unemployment insurance check anymore. So in other words, throughout this period, there was 20 million job creation underneath. Even as some people are losing job and filing for unemployment insurance, there's still 20 million job creation underneath. The overall picture is still not good, but at least it's not as bad as some media is trying to portray, because 44 million number is completely off. It is factually true that 44 million total new cases, but it should be the case that 20 million currently receiving, which means the other 20 million have probably found a job elsewhere. Now let's look at North Carolina specifically. Again, very similar. New cases declining with each passing week. Very good situation. And have you flattened the curve? Yes. The number of people on unemployment check is less and less with each passing week. So very good condition in North Carolina, implying that people are finding jobs, whether at a grocery store, whether at food delivery, Domino's are hiring jobs. So, overall, the situation is implying that the worst in the employment situation may be over. The question is, how long does it take to get us back to normal, like prior pandemic period? Now, during this difficult period of unemployment, it's interesting to look at some state-by-state variation. Let me focus on the state of Texas, because Texas is large and everybody can easily see Texas. And you see $165 there. So what does that mean for Texas? What it means is that if you got laid off in Texas and you are receiving unemployment check, on average, your unemployment check is higher than the wages you were earning by $665 per week. So many people in Texas are saying, wow, unemployment check is actually higher. What about North Carolina? In North Carolina, it is short by $36 on average. So on average, the unemployment insurance is trying to replace the lost income, but it's not doing 100% in North Carolina. It is slightly short by $36. And this is due to the fact that the federal government is adding on additional $600 per week on the unemployment insurance check. This check, generous check, expires in July 31st. After that, let's see what happens. Maybe Congress will negotiate and extend, or maybe it's not $600 additional, but $300 additional. We don't know. The House of Representatives, Senate will negotiate. President Trump wants to sign whatever that is agreed upon on the situation. Now, the monetary policy is most accommodative policy ever. Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, came out 2 days ago to say he is all in for next 3 years. Not this year alone, but for the next 3 years. Zero interest rate policy on the something called Fed funds rate, and quantitative easing of buying corporate debts, mortgage security debt, the government debt. What does this mean for realtors? Very simply, we have the record low mortgage rates. Blue line shows record low mortgage rate of 3.2%. And the orange line is 10-year borrowing rate. So if the US government needs to borrow money, this is what they are paying. And the two lines move closely together. One point of note, look at the last data point. 10-year treasury is less than 1%, which means that mortgage rate could be less than 3% in few weeks or few months, because it is a little larger, the gap, than normal. So it's possible that mortgage rate may actually go under 3% given the larger than normal gap situation. Mortgage rates are low because Fannie and Freddie can purchase those mortgage originations. So all your clients, whether they are working with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or your local mortgage brokers, those mortgages are being sold off to Fannie and Freddie, and hence mortgage rates can be low. On mortgages that cannot be purchased by Fannie and Freddie, which are jumbo mortgages, it is not working. It requires 40% down payment, pristine credit. So some of your luxury home buyers may face difficulty. And also your home sellers, say $1 million home, you're trying to sell that, there may not be so many buyers. So please keep that in mind. I know people in the Triangle region are saying there's not enough listing, but those are principally at the starter home and at mid-price. There is plentiful listings on the upper end, and there's fewer buyers because of the jumbo loan problems on the upper end market. The inventory situation is very low, and this is what I hear, and this is what the data say. And during the pandemic, we have even fewer listings than even before the pandemic. So housing shortage intensified during the pandemic. So hopefully with reopening of the economy, more listings show up. But this chart also shows that we are unlike back in 2007 when we had that foreclosure crisis. We don't have oversupply. We have undersupply. We lack housing inventory. And as you don't have to anticipate any price decline given no oversupply situation. And the buyers are facing historically low mortgage rates. Always remember, about 70% of the workforce would have secure employment. So even though there are people who don't have jobs, fortunately they have that enhanced unemployment insurance, but 70% of the workforce do have secure employment, and they are looking at record low mortgage rates. The first evidence of the pandemic impact is falling pending contracts. It declined 20% in March, another 20% in April. But the data in May, which is not yet released, is showing much better conditions, certainly better than April. It may even be better than March. So we are already seeing good improvement, which means that closing activity will follow the pending contract with about a month or two lag time. And I would say the worst is over if we look at the very early phase of the home buying process, mortgage applications. As a realtor, you tell your clients, get approval of mortgages before even searching for a home. So how many people are applying for mortgages? Before the pandemic, it was about 10% higher compared to 1 year ago. Then we hit a pandemic, so it was down 35%. In recent weeks, it is back above 1 year ago. So very good trend, almost a V-shaped recovery for the real estate sector or a housing sector. Commercial real estate is completely different, but for the residential real estate, V-shaped recovery. And here's an interesting data from the Dallas Federal Reserve. Somehow they work with technology companies and they look at the mobility, actual movement of the cell phones from one location to the other. Is it stationary, just staying at home, or is it moving around? And what one finds is that North Carolina, which is in the orange line, is showing more mobility compared to California and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania had one of the most strictest lockdown. Realtors cannot show homes at all until only a couple of weeks ago. So now they're coming with more delay. But North Carolina is ahead of other states because you are permitting home showing with the social distancing and reopening of the economy a little sooner. Now, housing shortage will not disappear because home builders actually cut back on production during the pandemic. So whatever housing shortage we had last year, it will intensify this year, and it will not be relieved, I would say even not next year, because home building takes a long time to build, but we need to encourage more home building. We need to let the local officials to allow for more home building because there's a great shortage of housing in the Triangle region. Now, one negative to all this narrative is this part. How is the government financing the stimulus bill? Is by running up a massive federal budget deficit. First, it is the proper policy in terms of unemployment check and stimulus measure because government imposed the shutdown and they need to compensate for that. But who is buying this debt? Is it the Chinese government who is buying this debt? German mutual funds or grandma? Or is it, say, the teachers union in North Carolina retirement fund who is buying this debt? But currently, the major source of purchaser of this debt is the Federal Reserve. And where is the Federal Reserve getting the money? They're printing money. So you can view the unemployment check as printed money from the Federal Reserve. All these stimulus measures are coming in. So if we print a lot of money, it should mean that we should have higher inflation. Because if you look at Germany after the First World War, they printed a lot of money and they had a hyperinflation. And some people say because of it, that people wanted to go extreme, and they truly went extreme by electing Hitler in Germany during that time period. And then you look at Venezuela today, they're printing money, and what happened? Well, there's hyperinflation. But in the US, we don't have to have hyperinflation. First, it's not a massive printing of the money. I mean, it's larger than normal, but it's not the massive printing of the money. And second is people trust the US dollar. What do I mean by that? $20 bill that you have in your pocket, you go to Mexico, or you go to Vietnam, or you go to Italy and say, here's $20 bill, give me a haircut. And they will give you a haircut. People accept the dollar. Not with other currencies, but people accept the dollar. So because of that, we can print money and not have inflation right away. But we need to print more money next year. So given so much printing of the money, at some point, we may have a little higher than normal inflation. People remember the 1970s, 10% inflation. Everything was rising at 10%. So what does that mean for real estate? So here is probably the most important part to deal with your clients that you want to relate to your clients. First, acknowledge there's printing of the money. We will not have inflation this year or next year. But 5, 6, 7 years from now, maybe we do have inflation. Real estate values will be rising along with inflation because it's a good hedge. College tuition, healthcare expense, food prices, even people's income will be rising by 10%. Or say 5%, but their standard of living is not rising because everything is more expensive. But there is one major expenditure where it's fixed, and that is people who buy a home now or next year at historically low mortgage rates, and their monthly payment is completely fixed. So something to consider, something to relate to your clients to say, if you lock in, your mortgage payment is fixed, even as everything else is rising. The real estate prices are rising, so that's our wealth gain that people will be getting, but not their mortgage payment. So something that you may want to relate to your clients. Let me go to the forecast quickly. So I put the numbers on the home sales. This is nationwide. That is less important than percentage change from your perspective. So the first quarter, we were up 5% from 1 year ago, so running very nicely. But the second quarter, we are faced with a hit, down about 30%. But the third and fourth quarter should be less significant declines. It may actually be positive based on mortgage application data. So these numbers, I know it will be off compared to the reality, but I'm giving you just rough guideline as to what happened, what to anticipate. But in 2021, everything should be running positive. So the very last column, GDP plus 3%. Federal Reserve said 2 days ago, they think GDP growth will be 5% in 2021. I hope they are right, but I'm a little more conservative. I'm calling 3% GDP growth. Job creation, net job creation, home prices nationwide rising about 1 to 3%. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, much faster because you have a housing shortage and people are moving into your region. But the home sales, whatever that is missed in 2020, will be captured in 2021. My final slide is something to think about. One permanent change, even if the vaccine is discovered, which Dr. Fauci believes we will have the vaccine before the year is done, is that people are becoming very comfortable with this Zoom technology or video conferencing. Twitter has announced to their workers, you can work from home forever. Facebook is giving a very flexible work from home schedule. And you may see more companies offer this. What does this mean? Well, you don't have to live in the city anymore because commuting is less important. In fact, people don't have to even live in the same state. So if you have a job in San Francisco, why not live out of Raleigh? Or if you have a job in Manhattan, what about in Durham? So it's a possibility that some people actually may decide to live further away, larger house, cheaper house by going into North Carolina. So I think North Carolina would be one of the beneficiaries of this permanent change in trend. You may also see that suburbs getting more interest than before. So some people may want to live closer to, say, Raleigh downtown. Now they said, no, I can live out in Chapel Hill. So, that's fight among realtors to see which, location is better. But I think you will see the suburbs getting greater interest, and North Carolina also getting much more interest compared to, say, Chicago, New York, or San Francisco. So let me stop there. So thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts with you. And I think you are positioned very well once the pandemic phase is over. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank Dr. Yoon for his comments. We had a couple of questions for him, if he could respond. Number one, we had some questions about the pending sales numbers you were talking about. Those were national, were they not?
Yeah, those are national numbers.
Okay. And a couple other questions about the unemployment benefits. Some states were very unprepared to handle the unemployment, and in North Carolina, I think there's 57,000 applications that they're behind in processing. Is that a problem that is impacting overall the country, or are the funds getting out to people as they're supposed to?
There is a state-by-state variation in it. I think Massachusetts was one of the first to completely set up a different website just for independent contractors to say, if you are independent contractors, don't use the normal computer system, use this new computer system, and they were able to bring the checks out very, very fast. But in some states, they had to reprogram their computer system to, but please keep in mind, it is retroactive. So please say that, from the mid-March when the economy shut down, this is the time period where your businesses was disrupted. And once the check is clear, the first check should be cumulative of, retroactive of all the missed payments.
Super. A couple of other questions that we have, Dr. Yoon. What are your expectations about higher paying jobs? Lower paying jobs have come back, but what about the other side?
So, there's always a distribution of the jobs and the income scale. And, technology sector is clearly the one that is the winners in the whole process. Given the triangle regions, a little more tech heavy, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the country. So you are positioned a little better there. But in terms of, other jobs, my parents actually worked at a textile factory in South Carolina. There's not a single textile factory working in South Carolina now. So those jobs are completely eliminated. But fortunately for my parents, they became small business owners. They shifted into other areas. But there will always be some level of dynamism that's going on in the economy. But the job numbers that I showed you in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill region, far higher job number compared to rest of the country before the pandemic. So I know that some people are disturbed by, say, furniture shops, going under and so forth, but there are other job creation in the process.
Since we expect so many companies to allow staff to work from home, how do you expect that to impact the commercial real estate market? What would you anticipate about vacancies there by making it more difficult to rent properties?
So commercial real estate is very difficult. First, if you have a portfolio of commercial real estate property, whether individual properties or say you own a REIT stock, it's going to be tough. In fact, the property prices on average will decline about 10%. That's on the diversified portfolio. Warehouses doing much better, and the prices are still rising. Rents are rising, but the office vacancy situation, I think it will rise, and it will have hard time declining even as job creation occurs. Retail sector is going to be very difficult, and the vaccine will be discovered. So the restaurants, we will back to normal in 2021. So in the meantime, social distancing part, but some of the retails, I think it accelerated that people are feeling more comfortable shopping online, and now more people will continue to do so.
We have a question. We have 3 major universities in the Triangle area what impact do you see on universities and reopening schools and all this sort of stuff like that in terms of the overall economy?
This is great. Duke, the premier university in North Carolina, will also say, they can match up with Duke not only in academics but in basketball. And then you have the state. I think because of the three universities, reason why you will have that triangle technology image, because as technology companies think about where to locate or expand, they want to tap into the human capital resource that three universities are easily able to supply.
Super. Another question, the volatility in the stock market, how do you think that's impacting consumer confidence in the economy overall?
I am very surprised how fast stock market has recovered. Clearly a V-shaped recovery in the stock market. I'm not sure what it's doing. I know you fell yesterday, what's doing today. But overall, compared to, given the 15% unemployment rate, I think stock market could be a little bit ahead of the overall economy. But that's the purpose of the stock market. They're always leading indicator about the rest of the economy. But the fluctuation in the stock market is also implying that people may want more stability. And real estate prices have been very stable before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and as we are reopening. Only time real estate prices declined was the subprime loan mistake of 10 years ago. Unfortunately, we don't have that mistake.
What would you expect with individually owner-owned residential rentals? What price point may do best? Do you think that we'll continue to see investment in single-family homes for rent?
Just for time purpose, this will be the last question part, but yeah. We have a housing shortage, not only for homeowners, but the apartment vacancy rates were running low. Single family the rental properties, you could easily find tenants. So we had a housing shortage across the board. So we need to build more. But now, because of the pandemic, fresh in mind, even with the vaccine discovery, I don't know whether people will have preference for single family rental over, say, high-rise apartment buildings. But at least in the short term, we have seen much stronger demand for single family homes rather than condominiums. If that's some relationship about whether people want to live in high-rise building versus single-family homes.
Well, Dr. Yoon, we want to thank you for joining the Triangle Realtors and giving us an update. We appreciate your time, appreciate the job you're doing, and thank you for participating today. I'm going to welcome in my cohorts, Wallace Pfeiffer from Durham and Lewis Grubbs from the Raleigh. And Wallace, start with you if you want to update us on what you're seeing in the Durham market.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. And good morning, everyone. I certainly wanted to thank Dr. Yoon for speaking with us today. And I wanted to thank Pat and Cub and Ashley at OCHAR for setting up this roundtable. I wanted to start out this morning with some very exciting news. In a report that came out this week from NAR, it identifies Durham in the top 10 housing markets for millennials during the pandemic. For those of you that didn't know, Durham had a malware attack that shut down the Register of Deeds for 3 to 4 weeks in March. Can you imagine that happening in Wake or Orange counties, or any other county for that matter? Durham was handcuffed and literally closings came to a standstill in March. Then along comes COVID-19 and a stay-at-home order. There were 16 municipalities across North Carolina that had stricter guidelines than the guidelines set out by Governor Cooper. Durham is the last city and county that is aligned with the North Carolina guidelines. Durham's mayor and the county commissioners had the toughest guidelines in the state and declared real estate as non-essential services. DRAR wanted to get a pulse of our membership, so we sent out a poll to our members to see if we should be allowed to operate according to the North Carolina stay-at-home order Or did real estate services represent a risk of transmission and the Durham restrictions were appropriate? Out of the members that replied, 87% of those agreed with the North Carolina stay-at-home order and 13% agreed with the strict Durham order. DRAR takes seriously the health and safety of our members and our community, and especially the buyers and sellers that we serve. We share in the responsibility of keeping our community safe, but we don't need government to tell property owners who they can and can't allow to come into their homes. We must be the voice in protecting private property rights at all times. The Durham mayor and county commissioners set up a task force with different businesses and originally left out real estate, and we had to request to be a part of this discussion. The moderator for the Real Estate Roundtable even said to us last week, he wasn't sure why our organization was singled out with the toughest restrictions. Every time they came out with a new order, we had to request additional changes almost weekly. It was very confusing for the agents in Durham, and it was also confusing for your agents in Raleigh and Chapel Hill, Orange County. It was confusing to all agents with these constant changings. Mayor Schul has publicly said that the realtors have been the most difficult group to work with, and rightfully so. You know, we've always been known to fight for what we believe is right. DRAR has given Durham officials the best practices guide for the coronavirus. We've also given them the COVID-19 addendum, and we also gave them our own COVID-aware commitment and disclosure. And that disclosure outlined how to conduct real estate safely by following the CDC recommendations. This has been a major struggle with Durham to let the realtors go back to work. I wanted to thank Sheila Willis, our CEO of DAR. She has answered more than 1,000 emails and phone calls. Also to the board of directors of DRAR for their guidance and input during this difficult time. The Durham stats for March, April, and May. March, our new listings were up 6.6%, but closings were down in March 20%. April, new listings were down 28%, and our April closings were up 11%, but we feel like this was due to the closings catching up from when the March Register of Deeds was closed. May, new listings were down 28.4%, and our May closings were down 34.2%. June appears to be rebounding because more sellers are putting their homes on the market now, and we know there is a huge pent-up demand with buyers sitting on the sidelines. We just got confirmation this morning that as of 5 p.m. today, the restrictions on real estate services will be lifted from the city and county safer at home order. This means open houses are allowed with up to 10 people at a time, using face covering, social distancing, and sanitations that are still required. So I think we have a lot to be thankful for. And I think looking forward to the market coming up in the summertime, June, July, and August, I think we will see some record sales in the summertime. So I hope this information has been helpful to everyone, and hope you have a nice weekend.
Super. Lewis, you want to give us an update on Raleigh? And
Sure, Pat. Glad to do that. And I also want to thank you, Pat, Cub, and Ashley for putting this program together today, and to Dr. Yoon for his market analysis. He's always very informative and shares some great information with us. So I also want to thank our members for their advocacy and continuing to work toward allowing real estate and real estate industry and providers to be and to maintain being a social service and an essential service within our communities. And to those who have fought the good fight, keep going, because it ain't over yet. We've got a long way to go. So let's keep moving forward to this. I think triangle-wide, Wallace hit some great numbers for the Durham market, but triangle-wide from our TMLS numbers, we're seeing contracts 15% ahead of last year as of the end of May. So we're seeing that as a result of, I think, market opening And even Durham's restrictions being eased a little bit, allowing more people out to be able to show houses. And even though the restrictions that were placed there, we're seeing some positive results. 4,885 closed transactions, or excuse me, under contract transactions for May, 15% ahead of last year, but that's a whopping 38% ahead of what April looked like. So congratulations to everybody who's been out there in the trenches working and putting houses under contract. You know, our industry is and will also be, and Dr. Yoon, I think, emphasized that when he spoke, a growing and robust portion of this recovery from COVID. Each transaction that we contribute on a national basis contributes to the industry $88,416 to the local economies. And here in North Carolina, just to quote a local number, and this is a result of the NAR survey most recently done, that number to the local economies in North Carolina is $71,800. And this is represented by all the facets of our industry and our partners that contribute to a real estate transaction, whether it be paying of our realtors, attorneys, inspectors, title insurance companies, contractors, movers, painters, you name it. All of that is a part of a transaction in real estate. And so all of those things contribute to our overall economy and put money back into the local economy to help improve things. And we will continue to move forward, being a dramatic driving force in the recovery of our economy, even better than what we're seeing currently. I think COVID has been a mixed blessing to us in a way. Yes, it's dramatically impacted how we do business. There are still some issues to be ironed out there. We have been working with our General Assembly members this past week, lobbying them to use some of the federal funds to distribute those out to realtors and local businesses to help, again, regenerate our economy through some federal funds through our state agencies. And, you know, electronic recordings and broadband, encouraging them to support those kinds of initiatives through the General Assembly, and particularly those counties that do not have electronic recording for deeds. We're encouraging them to expand broadband across the state so that every home has that capability in the near future as opposed to a distant future, and to work with the local jurisdictions so that the registers of deeds can be able to record digitally. If I can be here in Wake County, record one in Vance County or in Alamance County without having to physically drive to do that, especially in a time when occupancy of offices is way down and people are being encouraged to stay home. We are blessed not having to wear masks in Wake County. And I think we're also blessed the fact that we have not had a tremendous downturn in our ability to show homes. I think the downturns that we have experienced in the Raleigh area have been cautiousness from people who are buying a home or selling a home, of being able to go out in a group environment or have people coming into their home whom they don't know or know where they've been or whom they've been in contact with regard to touching surfaces and so forth. And we've been proactive to send forth and to promote what we like to call responsible real estate practice. And that is guidelines to everyone, showing homes to wear masks and provide them for your clients, perhaps gloves if they feel necessary, or if the sellers wish to ask that be done, carry hand sanitizer with them, and encourage the sellers of the homes before and after showings to wipe down all hard surfaces and to disinfect for their own and for buyers' potential safety. So I think we can look at COVID, even though it's created a lot of havoc, we can look at it as somewhat of a blessing moving forward to some things that we're hopefully going to encounter. One of the nice things that we have seen as a result of this, you heard Dr. Yoon speak of inventory, and that's been an issue even before COVID. home values in our area are going to be increasing again and continue to increase based on the availability of inventory. The positive from our MLS numbers I was quoting a while ago from is that May over April, we saw, oddly enough, housing availability become even better than the prior month, the month of April, by a couple of percentage points. So even in the midst of all this, there are options out there for housing. I don't know about Orange and Durham counties, but I know here in Wake County, apartment complexes are popping out of the ground like corn seeds. You know, it's like crazy. They're everywhere, and they're nice dwellings, nice apartments, and it appears that the prices are reasonable. I'm hoping that's not just from an opening standpoint, but they'll continue to be reasonable for a while. The other thing I'd like to share with everybody, and I think this has been very positive for us, is that our association is an ambassador association in NAR India. And for those who don't know, one of the largest groups of investors in Triangle Real Estate is from the nation of India. And we have a large Indian contingent in this area. They like this area for a variety of reasons: diversity, tech sectors, medical sectors, pharmacy, you name it. There are any of a number of reasons why groups of investors from the continent and the nation of India want to do business here and seek home ownership here. We've joined in with them and became an ambassador association with them about 2 years ago now. And we've had communications with them, discussions with them, sharing educational opportunities and business concept opportunities to help NAR India grow their business and help hopefully make their agents more productive and more successful as well. So long story short, I'm happy that we're here where we are, even with some of the things we've been dealing with over the last few months. This is one of the best places we could be in the United States for supporting our industry and our business in real estate. So thanks again, guys, for supporting us here and presenting and providing this program for us today.
Super. Lou? For May, actually outpaced sales of May last year. And listings are behind, so I think we're going to be having an inventory issue even more acute than we had last year. In Orange and Chatham, we saw the same thing. We were actually up for the two counties in May about 3% of over sales for last May. June's even ahead of that. For the first 10 days of June, we're ahead of sales by 11% over last June. So that's real encouraging. On the safety standpoint, we cover two counties. Orange County still requires masks. Chatham County never instituted anything other than the state requirements. So we are doing that. We had a question from the group about how we think as realtors transitioned into virtual tours and virtual showings, do we think that will be something that will continue, that we'll see more and more of that? Are those methods of showing property and listing property going to continue to be a viable source even as we move out of the pandemic? So let me just real quickly ask Wallace what he thinks about that, and Lewis real quickly, and we don't have too much time.
You know,
Wallace?
Pat, I think virtual tours to show a house, I think they work for some people, especially if they're not local. But I think you still have to go into a home, see it, feel it, touch it, because houses talk to people. And I think, you know, if I were going to spend any amount of money for a home, I think personally I would have to go walk through it.
Super. All right. Lewis, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I totally agree with Wallace. I think that speaks again to our industry and the fact that I'm not sure I will live to see the day where we won't have face-to-face contact as realtors with clients. I think it's very important that happen from a trust standpoint, from an education standpoint, from a reference and referral standpoint. I think it's imperative that we continue to build those reputations. and a lot of people cannot grasp what a home actually is going to look like from a picture, even from a virtual tour or 3D tour. And so that person-to-person, face-to-face, in-home contact is very important to that.
Super. I want to thank Wallace and Lewis for participating with us today and joining together. I think it's great anytime we can come together as a group. Great information. Just as if I can plug another thing we've got coming up next week, we're doing a thing with the Home Builders Association of Durham, Orange, and Chatham County, doing a Zoom town hall with them next week to talk about what they're seeing from the building side. We'd love to have you guys participate with us on that. But I want to thank everybody for coming today, joining us. I think hope you found the information useful and helpful. And be safe, wash your hands, and take care. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat.